why this season feels heavy. God is preparing you for more. There are seasons in life when everything feels heavier than before. Not louder, not clearer, just heavier. The responsibility weighs more. The questions run deeper. The pressure feels personal. You're still faithful. You're still praying. But something has shifted inside you. You sense that God is doing more than correcting you or comforting you. It feels like He is preparing you, stretching you, trusting you with something you cannot yet fully see. God often does His greatest work quietly. Before He sends someone publicly, He shapes them privately. Before He expands a mission, He deepens a heart. Scripture shows us that God does not entrust greater purpose to those who seek importance, but to those who are willing to be formed. And the forming is rarely comfortable. It is marked by pressure, waiting, obedience without explanation, and faith tested in hidden places, not because God is distant, but because He is intentional. Many believers mistake this season for punishment or delay. They assume something must be wrong because life feels harder, not easier. But throughout the Bible, increased responsibility often comes before increased clarity. God trusted Joseph long before the palace. He trusted David long before the throne. He trusted Esther before the crown, and Moses before the calling was fully revealed. God's trust always precedes God's promotion. If you feel stretched right now, it may not be because you are failing. It may be because you are growing. If you feel pressure to rise spiritually, to take responsibility, to walk more carefully, to pray more deeply, to obey more fully, it may be because God is entrusting you with more weight. And God never places weight on someone He has not already prepared to carry it. This message is for those who feel the quiet stirring of purpose, but do not yet see the full picture. For those who are faithful in obscurity, learning obedience in silence, and wrestling with a sense that God is asking for more. This is not about ambition. It is about stewardship. It is about recognizing the signs that God is trusting you with something bigger right now. And if that is true, then this season matters more than you realize. Number 1, God is allowing pressure that is stretching your faith. When God begins trusting someone with a greater mission, pressure almost always increases before clarity does. This pressure is not random, and it is not meant to break you. It is meant to strengthen you. Throughout Scripture, God consistently allows weight to be placed on those He is preparing, not to crush them, but to stretch their capacity. Pressure reveals where your faith truly rests. It exposes whether you rely on comfort, control, or God Himself. This kind of pressure often shows up as increased responsibility, deeper spiritual awareness, or a sense that what used to be enough no longer satisfies. You may feel compelled to pray more seriously, to walk more carefully, to live with greater integrity. The margin for compromise feels smaller. Conviction feels sharper. The cost of disobedience feels heavier. That is not coincidence. God is training your faith to carry more weight. In the Bible, those entrusted with greater mission were first entrusted with greater pressure. David faced danger and isolation before leadership. Joseph carried betrayal, injustice, and responsibility long before authority. Jesus Himself was led into the wilderness before public ministry. Pressure was not a sign of God's absence. It was evidence of His preparation. God does not test faith to see if you will fail. He tests it to grow your endurance. Pressure also exposes motives. It reveals whether you serve God for results or for obedience. When things become heavy, shallow faith begins to fall away. What remains is a deeper dependence on God. You learn to pray differently, not for escape but for strength, not for clarity alone, but for faithfulness. Pressure teaches you to trust God when outcomes are uncertain and affirmation is absent. If you are feeling stretched right now, resist the urge to retreat. This is not the season to pull back. It is the season to lean in. God is not asking you to be stronger. He is teaching you to rely more deeply on Him. Pressure is often the language God uses to say, I trust you with more. And the faith that grows under pressure is the faith God builds great missions upon. Number 2. God is asking for obedience without full explanation. One of the clearest signs that God is trusting you with a bigger mission is when he begins asking for obedience before he gives understanding. This is deeply uncomfortable, especially for those who want clarity, confirmation, and reassurance before taking a step. But in the Bible, God rarely reveals the full picture up front. He reveals just enough to require trust. Obedience without explanation separates surface-level faith from surrendered faith. It tests whether you trust God's character more than your own understanding. Abraham was asked to go without knowing where. Noah was asked to build before rain ever fell. Peter was asked to step out of the boat without knowing how the water would hold. God does not withhold explanation to confuse you. He withholds it to deepen trust. When God is preparing you for greater responsibility, he begins shaping your response to uncertainty. He watches how you obey when clarity is incomplete. Do you hesitate until everything makes sense? Or do you move when God speaks? Obedience in the absence of explanation trains discernment, humility, and reliance. These qualities are essential for anyone entrusted with greater mission. This season can feel lonely. Others may not understand your obedience. You may struggle to explain why you are making certain choices, turning down certain opportunities, or stepping into uncomfortable obedience. But God often removes external validation, so your obedience becomes anchored in him alone. He is teaching you to listen more closely to his voice than to public opinion. Obedience without explanation also purifies intention. You are no longer obeying for reward, recognition, or results. You obey because God asked. And that kind of obedience is powerful. It tells God that your yes is not conditional. It shows him that you can be trusted to move when he speaks, even when the outcome is unclear. If God is asking you to obey without explaining everything, it is not because he is withholding good from you. It is because he is entrusting you with more. He is training you to walk by faith, not by sight. And those who learn to obey in silence are often the ones God speaks through most clearly when the mission is revealed. Number 3. God is developing your character more than your comfort. When God begins trusting you with a bigger mission, he often shifts his focus from making your life comfortable to making your heart strong. Comfort can coexist with immaturity, but calling cannot. Scripture shows again and again that before God expands influence, he deepens character. This is why seasons of preparation often feel uncomfortable, demanding, and even unfair. God is not being unkind. He is being intentional. Character development usually happens in places no one applauds. It is formed in patience when progress is slow, humility when recognition is absent, and integrity when compromise would be easier. God allows situations that expose pride, insecurity, impatience, and self-reliance not to shame you, but to refine you. He is removing what cannot go with you into the next season. A bigger mission requires a deeper foundation. In the Bible, God never rushed character. Moses spent years learning humility before leading a nation. David learned restraint before authority. Paul learned dependence before influence. God understands that unchecked gifting can destroy a person, but refined character can sustain calling. So he takes his time. He allows resistance. He permits delay. He uses discomfort as a tool to shape you into someone who can carry responsibility without losing humility. This focus on character can feel confusing. You may wonder why God is not changing your circumstances when you have prayed faithfully. But often God is more interested in changing how you respond than what you feel. He is watching how you handle disappointment, how you speak under pressure, how you remain faithful when obedience costs you. These moments are not small. They are preparation. As character grows, your inner life becomes steadier. You are less reactive, less defensive, less driven by emotion or approval. You begin to choose obedience over comfort, faithfulness over convenience. This transformation is quiet, but powerful. It is God shaping a leader who will not collapse under weight, a servant who will not be corrupted by responsibility. If God seems more concerned with who you are becoming than how easy your life feels, that is not neglect. It is trust. He is building depth before distance, roots before reach. And when the mission grows, it will not crush you, because your character has been strengthened to carry it. Number 4. God is isolating you from distractions and lesser assignments. One of the most painful yet powerful signs that God is trusting you with something greater is separation, not punishment, not rejection, but intentional isolation from what once felt familiar. God often removes distractions, relationships, and opportunities that no longer align with where He is taking you. This pruning can feel confusing, lonely, and even frightening, but it is purposeful. In Scripture, God repeatedly isolates those He is preparing. Moses was separated in the wilderness. Elijah was hidden by the brook. Paul spent time in obscurity before ministry expanded. Even Jesus withdrew often before major moments of purpose. Isolation is not abandonment, it is alignment. God removes noise so you can hear His voice more clearly. This season may feel like loss. People may drift. Invitations may decrease. Opportunities that once excited you may no longer feel right. You may feel misunderstood or unseen. But God is often protecting you from being distracted by lesser assignments that would dilute your calling. Not everything good is God's best for you. Isolation also reveals dependency. When familiar support systems fade, you are forced to lean more fully on God. Prayer deepens, discernment sharpens, motives are purified. You begin to ask, who am I serving, rather than who is watching? God is training your heart to be led by obedience, not affirmation. This pruning hurts because it cost you what once felt safe, but God never removes without intention. He clears space so something greater can grow. He separates you not to make you smaller, but to prepare you for something weightier. Distraction must be removed before direction can be revealed. If you are experiencing separation right now, resist the urge to chase what God is removing. Do not cling what no longer fits. This season is not about isolation for isolation's sake. It is about consecration. God is narrowing your focus, strengthening your foundation, and preparing you for a mission that requires clarity, depth, and undivided devotion. What feels like loss may actually be preparation. And what feels like isolation may be God saying, I am trusting you with something more. Number 5. God is increasing your burden for others. When God is preparing you for a bigger mission, He often begins by enlarging your heart. You start to feel things more deeply, not just your own struggles, but the pain, confusion, and spiritual need of others. What once felt distant now feels personal. Situations that others can ignore weigh heavily on you. This is not emotional weakness. It is spiritual sensitivity. God is allowing you to feel what He feels. In the Bible, those God entrusted with greater responsibility were first entrusted with greater compassion. Moses could not ignore the suffering of his people. Nehemiah wept over a city he had not seen in years. Jesus was moved with compassion before He ever acted. A growing burden is often God's way of shaping a servant's heart before assigning a servant's work. This burden may show up as intercession. You feel drawn to pray for people, places, or situations without being asked. You may carry concern that lingers long after conversations end. You may feel restless when injustice goes unaddressed, or when people walk without hope. God is not overwhelming you. He is inviting you to participate in His heart for others. This burden is also refining. It moves you beyond self-focus. Your prayers shift from Lord bless me to Lord use me. Comfort becomes less important than obedience. Convenience becomes secondary to compassion. God often allows the burden before He reveals the assignment, because the assignment must flow from love, not ambition. Carrying this burden can feel heavy. You may wonder why God allows you to feel so deeply, but God never stirs compassion without purpose. He is preparing you to serve not from ego, but from empathy. Those who are trusted with greater mission must first learn to carry people in prayer before leading them in action. If your heart feels heavier for others right now, do not harden it. Do not numb it. Let it drive you to prayer, humility, and dependence on God. A burden from God is not meant to crush you. It is meant to align you with His mission, and God only entrusts that kind of burden to those He plans to use. Number 6. God is testing your faithfulness in small, hidden places. Before God entrusts greater influence, He tests faithfulness where no one is watching. This is one of the most consistent principles in Scripture. God does not measure readiness by visibility, but by obedience in obscurity. If God is trusting you with a bigger mission, you will often find yourself serving faithfully in places that feel small, unnoticed, and unimpressive. This season can feel frustrating. You may wonder why your efforts seem overlooked or why your obedience feels hidden. But God watches what others miss. He observes how you handle responsibility without recognition, how you serve without applause, how you obey when no one affirms you. Faithfulness in small places reveals whether your heart is anchored in God or in validation. Jesus taught that those who are faithful with little can be trusted with much. This is not about skill. It is about stewardship. God is less concerned with how gifted you are, and more concerned with how dependable you are. He is watching consistency, integrity, and humility. He is shaping someone who can be trusted with influence without being corrupted by it. In hidden seasons, obedience becomes pure. You serve because God asked, not because people notice. You pray because God is worthy, not because results are immediate. These moments refine your motives. They strip away entitlement and replace it with gratitude. They teach you to value God's approval above all else. God often delays expansion to strengthen foundation. He is not withholding opportunity. He is protecting you. A mission that grows faster than character can destroy a person. So God waits. He tests. He refines. And when the time comes, what you have learned in secret will sustain you in public. If you feel unseen right now, remain faithful. Heaven sees you. God sees you. This season is not wasted. It is essential. Faithfulness in hidden places is often the clearest sign that God is preparing to trust you with something far greater than you imagine. Number 7. God is calling you to depend on Him more than ever before. One of the final and clearest signs that God is trusting you with a bigger mission is an increased sense of dependence. You realize, sometimes uncomfortably, that you cannot do what is being asked of you in your own strength. The weight feels beyond your capacity. Your skills feel insufficient. Your confidence feels shaken. This is not insecurity. It is preparation. God never assigns a mission that can be accomplished without Him. In Scripture, God consistently leads people to the edge of themselves before entrusting them with greater responsibility. Gideon felt weak and unqualified. Jeremiah felt too young. Moses felt incapable. Paul learned that strength was made perfect in weakness. God intentionally allows you to feel inadequate so you will rely on Him rather than yourself. A mission sustained by human strength will eventually fail, but a mission sustained by dependence on God will endure. This season often brings deeper prayer. Not polished prayer, but desperate prayer. You begin to talk to God more honestly, more frequently, more urgently. You stop pretending to have answers. You stop managing appearances. You bring your fears, doubts, and limitations to God without filters. And in that vulnerability, intimacy grows. Dependence deepens relationship. God is also teaching you to listen. When you depend on Him, you become more attentive to His guidance. You pause before decisions. You seek wisdom rather than rushing forward. You learn that God's direction matters more than your pace. Dependence slows you down so you do not outrun God's will. This reliance also reshapes humility. You stop measuring yourself by comparison. You stop striving to prove worth. You accept that calling is not about ability, but availability. God is not looking for those who feel ready. He is looking for those who will stay surrendered. Dependence becomes the posture that keeps your heart aligned even when responsibility grows. If you feel like you need God more now than ever before, that is not a sign of weakness. It is confirmation. God is drawing you closer because what lies ahead requires proximity. He is training you to move with Him, not ahead of Him. And those who learn to depend deeply are the ones God trusts fully. Conclusion. When God trusts you, He prepares you. God does not entrust greater mission casually. He prepares carefully, patiently, and purposefully. What feels like pressure is often preparation. What feels like silence is often shaping. What feels like limitation is often invitation. God is not testing you to see if you are worthy. He is forming you because He already sees what He plans to do through you. If you recognize yourself in these signs, take heart. You are not being overlooked. You are being prepared. God is building depth before expansion, character before influence, dependence before assignment. The waiting is not wasted. The hiddenness is not meaningless. The stretching is not accidental. This season may feel uncomfortable, even lonely at times. But God often does His greatest work away from crowds. He forms leaders in wilderness seasons. He builds servants in obscurity. He strengthens faith in silence. And when the moment comes, what He has formed in you will sustain what He entrusts to you. Do not rush this season. Do not resist the shaping. Do not envy someone else's platform while God is deepening your foundation. Stay obedient. Stay humble. Stay faithful in small things. Stay dependent on God. He knows exactly what He is doing. If this message stirred something in your heart, take time to pray and ask God what He is preparing you for. Ask Him for faithfulness, humility, and courage to trust His process. If this message encouraged you, like the video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who may be in a season of preparation without clarity. God does not waste seasons. And when He trusts you with a bigger mission, it is because He has already been preparing you for it all along.